Now we can do it. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. I don't have the Berlin Wall falling in my own story.
Perfect, you said it. My name is Antje Steinmuller. I am a professor at California College of the Arts. I run the Bachelor of Architecture program there, and I co-direct with Neeraj the Urban Works Agency. And on the side, I have a small practice called Ideal X Design that deals with public space in transition and an interest in the urban commons.
And my name is Neeraj Bahtia. As Antje mentioned, I teach with her at the California College of the Arts, and I also run an office called the Open Workshop. The Open Workshop is an architecture, urban design, and landscape practice founded in 2013 in Toronto originally, and it was really set up as a research-based practice to ask questions about how architects can have more agency on shaping the built environment and empowering both people as well as the natural environment around them. Our mode of practice comes through speculative design projects, research-based projects, as well as things such as competitions.
I grew up in Europe in dense cities, and I experienced Berlin at a time when the wall came down and when, in essence, citizens began to shape the city through their own actions and through really kind of an ambition to make it their own territory. And I was really fascinated by that and sort of wondered about the role of design.
I grew up in Toronto, and it's an extremely diverse, multicultural context to grow up in. In fact, the visible minority was the majority in the way that, in the kind of urban fabric that I grew up in. And I was always really interested in how that city was so unique and kind of supported this level of pluralism. And that's really what led me to architecture school. And I think right now what I love about architecture is that it's both cultural and technical. And I think that kind of range, that spectrum between the cultural and technical is what we need to address questions such as climate change, the future of economic inequality, and so forth. We started working together in 2016, both teaching at CCA and realizing shared interests around questions of the commons and commoning practices. Antje had been teaching a series of seminars and studios looking at these issues already, and I was just starting into looking at housing at the time and saw this amazing overlap. And I think we really came together around this question of the commune, which is a form of commons at a scale of the house. I would say the current project we're working on has been really exciting for me. It started as something looking at more kind of a theoretical, historic lens about how people come together and craft a relationship between their politics and space. But now it's really moved into a realm of influencing policy and legislation that can have a radical effect on creating more ethical and humane conditions for people living in the city. And I think that spectrum, again, of kind of a project that both has a theoretical and historic underpinning, a kind of form-based way of having agency as a designer as well as a policy component, has been really satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, for me, this is probably the project that has most closely foregrounded questions around how architecture really influences community and social interaction between people, which of course is something that we naturally always think about, but I feel like this project is really crystallizing this in an exceptional way. And so I agree with Neeraj, this has definitely been, also perhaps because of its duration, right, to be able to track something for 5 years and to really also see what happens in terms of changes with regard to how people live together, how some of these commons and communes survive or change, has been incredibly rewarding. I was really fortunate actually to be in the David Ireland House, I think in '99, and to have a tour by David Ireland at the time. And for me personally, the fact that so many layers of time are present in the house and that he, in his practice, enriched but also revealed those layers is still to this day completely inspiring. And I would also sort of say, like, having been fortunate enough to know him briefly, his way of talking about it, right, and talking about his own process, like in the context of the house, was incredible, right, and sort of is something that stays with me.
I didn't have the pleasure of having David Ireland tour me around the house. I saw it more recently, but actually during when we were doing this research, so it was kind of influential to me in terms of I lived just around the corner from here for years and walked by the house so many times, and I had no idea this is what was behind the walls. And coming into the house for the first time, just seeing this radical, different world where you could see his way of living, his way of thinking inscribed into the interiors of the building. It's really reminded me a lot of the case studies we've looked at in our analysis, where from the outside, many of them are reappropriated buildings and pretty anonymous. And then when you go inside, there's a radical experiment on a different way of living that I saw happening here.
I'm going to start with David Ireland's work because I have always been fascinated by the way he reappropriated everyday objects. And, one could, of course, look at the house also as a kind of everyday, residential object that got transformed kind of under his, and reread really under his influence.
Yeah, I think similarly, in terms of Ireland's work, I really am drawn to the use of humble materials and sometimes even off-the-shelf products that are put together in new ways to make novel things. And I think there's something, again, we see in our research with a lot of these communes and communities of a kind of do-it-yourself ethos in his work that I see a really beautiful resonance. In terms of the house, I was completely blown away by the walls. The idea of peeling back the layers of the plaster and adding polyurethane on it. Not only, again, this very industrial, off-the-shelf kind of material, but also how through that light operated completely differently in the house, and how now the house acts as some sort of living archive of like the various of its past, but also projecting to the future. The cracks in the polyurethane indexing various earthquakes and so forth. I feel like that the walls feel alive to me, and I think it's a really powerful part of the house.
Yeah, I think the walls are super interesting to me because you can read or reflect on the decisions he made in terms of what to reveal, when to apply polyurethane, right? Like how to sort of expose certain layers. And so it makes me think when I walk through the house.
I think the future of communal design and architecture might be heading towards looking at the past. I think the idea of living together is not new. It's actually something that we've forgotten how to do, and we used to live in very much extended families and networks that offered resilience, and then we kind of transitioned to nuclear families, and now many people live in non-nuclear family as well as just in other configurations. And I hope that the future of architecture and communal design recognizes these alternative configurations and ways that people are living and find support, and B, create a range of typologies to live together that help people learn how to live together again. I think it's really a skill to live together, and if you've never done it, you might need to take baby steps and really learn how to form politics, how to negotiate with people, how to compromise in everyday life, but also how you get the benefits back from doing all these things.
And I would add that I think architecture and maybe architects' responsibilities to give shape to the collective is really increasing. And it's always been there, right? But I think now we're much more aware of the role that architecture has and the importance that living and being together really has in today's world.
I hope that the future of our work can continue to speculate on alternative forms of practice that can do research and create a link between research and design, and through that create actionable outcomes for people's everyday life to empower them as well as empower the environments and the landscapes that they live in.
And I would add that I think this project for me has really brought out the need to engage a number of different audiences, from learning from citizens in terms of like how they live, and really applying that directly to design and practice, and then in turn publicizing and really reaching audiences that might benefit from knowing about this, and as Neeraj said, to bring this to the level where it informs the decisions of politicians and hopefully changes the face of our cities in a significant way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your help.